Hi, you're listening to Mindset, spelled with AI, a weekly or bi-weekly or like twice a month. I don't know. Podcast that is shaping what you know and think about AI. My name is David. I'm a tech journalist and an entrepreneur. And here with me, as always, is Filip, an AI executive. Hi, Filip.
Hi, David. Good to see you.
So Filip, you wrote something, and we will spend today to talk about it. I'll just say if someone wants to follow Mindset, you can find us on YouTube, on Spotify, and wherever you want to follow this podcast. And you can send us questions to our email address, which is ideas@mindsetpodcast.com. So you wrote an essay titled "Artificial Intelligence Will Hit Me Before 50." Not sure if it's the best kind of translation of the title because you wrote it in Slovak, I think, originally. And so it starts with your 43rd birthday and the realization of near future.
Yeah.
Can you describe what went through your head when you and why you needed to put it on paper? Well,
Yes.
e-paper.
I think the translation of "hit me before the 50" is actually fitting really well in English. And by the way, there's an English version of it, which we can put in the show notes as well. So here's the thing. Usually, birthdays are kind of a moments where you realize that next year is over and you have a time to think about also what to expect until your next birthday. I mean, this was not any important jubilee, right? Like 43 is nothing specific. But what I realized is that until the next big jubilee, which will be 50 for me, hopefully, if I can make it until that age, is that the things will be very different. And I wanted to write this piece mainly because there's a lot of people in my age who are seeing AI coming and they see, well, it's maybe a kind of a hype topic for the younger ones, and we somehow manage to swim through the rest of our life more or less in the kind of realm or realities that we knew. And this was like an alarm clock for these people, realizing like, wait, but as usually the age of going off to work and like enjoying pension is somewhere 65 plus for most of the Western countries. Like it's too many of the years until you kind of want to jump out of a job market, and I think you can't hide it. So I was trying to write this piece to for the generation of mine and maybe even younger to realize like, look, there's no way that you can hide or run away from this until you still be working. So you better adapt, and that's why I wrote this piece.
A side question: I have a colleague who wants to retire at 50. With this in mind, is it only for the 0.001% that could amass a potentially big wealth to get through whatever will come in the next 10, 20 years? Or is it very tricky to think that much in the future when we know that like these shifts, well, you're proposing they're coming, no one knows what will come, but keeping in mind what we know, how quickly everything shifts around, can I or anyone, like let's say like an upper middle class, amass enough wealth to come and say, okay, 50, whatever happens, I don't care, I have enough?
Yes, that's a good question. Well, the answer is depending on when did you start to amass or accumulate the resources. So if this is the moment you start to think about it, then the answer is no, right? If you had this revelation maybe 10 years ago, then and you started to put aside something in your pension plan or in your kind of a savings or whatever, then it's probably realistic. But still, what I try to direct the piece at is not only the economic sense of it. I do spend like significant part of the essay on explaining how the earning your salary or earning your income will look like most likely and what you should do to adapt to that new normal. But it also has a little bit of the meaning like if you don't know what to do for 15 years of your life until you die, or maybe 20 years of your life until you die, that's pretty frustrating as well. So even though of course for the people in productive age as we are, the income and like sustaining your family and also your question goes around like, can I accumulate enough resources to survive? So that's a primary concern. But even if you can, the AI will going to hit you in some aspects, even if you are financially kind of good to survive. And I also try to then discuss, we're going to probably come to that in a few minutes. I try to discuss also like wisdom, learning, having a meaning, kind of having a self image or like a self consistency. So that these kind of things which also come across, and it's not only financial aspect of it.
Okay, so in the essay, early in the essay, you're drawing this comparison of the current development of AI and where is it going to, and how is it affecting us, to flying on a plane. Can you explain the analogy?
Yes. So I chose this analogy for 3 reasons. First of all, when you are in the plane, however you can kind of try to postpone the things, there is a moment where you need to address it. Because if you don't kind of try to land the plane, the gravity will land it for you, right? So this is the one of the reasons why I chose that. So we are sitting in a plane which needs to land, and it's better land safely because there is a way to land it even if you don't care how it's going to land, right? So that's like first reason. The second reason why I chose this analogy is that when I look around in my surroundings, in my friends, in my bubble of people around me, I do see that many of them like are sitting and enjoying their life without like any thought even about what is going to come. So I think this is a little bit of the analogy that like there's few people in a cockpit who know like what the heck is going on, and there's a lot of people like in a main cabin enjoying their lunch and enjoying their in-flight entertainment, their TikToks, their kind of movies or whatever, and having like no clue what is just about to happen, right? And so that's the kind of a second reason. And a third reason I think is that as you're flying with a plane, you don't know really how much you have fuel as a passenger, but you're sure that there is a moment where the fuel will run out, right? And therefore, I wanted to also avoid the discussion about the AI and its implication, like when is it going to come? Because most of the discussion in media, whenever it comes to like future of AI, so when we will have AGI and how quickly this will happen, that doesn't really matter. And this is why I also formulated the essay like it's going to hit me before 50, right? Because it's 7 years ahead, right? And that's a time span where I'm like pretty sure to bet on the major things will happen, seeing like what happened in last 2 years only. So the analogy here is like, let's not spend time on discussing if you have 2034 minutes in the plane or 2020 minutes in the plane. It doesn't really matter. It's obvious that we will have to face it. It's obvious it's soon enough for us not to ignore. And let's rather focus on how we can make a difference, how we can actually adapt to what is coming.
So we kind of see eye to eye on this topic, right? We're, I think, on the same page when it comes to this. Uh, Maybe it would be a more dynamic podcast if I was a bigger AI, pessimist than I am. But it is what it is. But were some of the reactions that you got, because you published this essay also in the biggest outlet in the country, were there more positive, negative? What reactions did you get?
Yes. So first of all, there was quite an interest into it because it's a long read. It's like probably if you want to go from A to Z, it's probably 20 minutes of a read. So it's not that everybody wants or like is used to investing so much time into reading articles. So I was surprised that significant like amount of people actually finished even the reading, not started, but even finished the reading, which is interesting by itself. The most of the reactions I got were not like, yet another doomist or whatever. The most questions, please tell me what that really means. How does, please explain in a detail what exactly that means. So I think it was more like kind of inspired curiosity, I would say. So people were up for like, oh, tell me more, or what does it really mean at the end game, or my specific area. Do you have any specifics from the general statements that you made for my area? So I was surprised that it was mostly kind of people interested in the details. There was not a lot of denials. Probably the denials didn't finish the articles. Um, Might be self-selection as well, but the reactions I got were like, oh, tell me more.
Okay, because that's interesting, because the most common reaction. So I have another podcast in Slovak, and whenever I talk to someone about AI, the most common reaction from the guest is, yes, AI is coming, it will take over, but not my job. It will be like other jobs, and I can see it. And the listeners started pointing this out, that you have these guests, and they always say like their job is very difficult and hard to replicate, and they're just like pointing to other jobs. I think it's a normal reaction in a way, but shouldn't there be like some like an urgency? So you're one of the voices, right, who's like saying
Yeah.
like, okay, we need to think about it, we need to come up with alternatives. And I always like has have had this idea, well, not always, but in the recent months, that like it's an urgent topic. It's almost like you see governments putting together a task force for like third world war or whatever is coming, pandemic, whatnot. And this is kind of a big thing, and I kind of thought there should be something, but I don't know if there is, and I'm not sure. Actually, I think there isn't. So like, shouldn't be this like too urgent, or are we like both of us and maybe the surrounding around us just like too much like alarming the the society? Like, I'm still on the fence, like, am I too much, or like is the reaction to what's happening kind of the opposite, because it's normal, right? Like if you're like breaking someone's habit, or if you're kind of breaking the spirit of what people believe, and you're saying no, this will like hit you very differently, and the normal reaction is no, no, no. What's your take on this?
Yes. So first of all, this is the reason why I name it is going to hit me in the title. I didn't want to hit you. I want to make it very personal, like a confession that I think is going to hit me. And because I do see this tension, or kind of this tendency towards, hey, I know it's going to be issue, but the others should worry, right? I have seen that as well in our community. So this is kind of a mobilizing voice. Hey, it is going to hit me, and it's you as well. And this is why I formulated it that way. Now, to your second point, like, are we too alarmist or not? Look, as I said, we are in the air with a plane. It's obvious it needs to land somehow, somewhere. Maybe, like, you jump out of the seat in a 10th minute of the flight and say, we'll have to kind of make sure that we land this plane, sounds a bit too alarmist, right? But what people kind of don't realize is how long it will take to actually adjust for that, right? And the time is ticking. Like, the clock is on. It will not run away. And this is why I said before 50, to give people a bit of an indication, like, hey, it's my 43rd birthday. I think this is going to be in less than 7 years. Now, if you think that you want to wait 5 years and then only do something the last 2 years, well, your choice. I try to describe things like changing university education, changing the way that we kind of work and collaborate in a working environment. And I think this will take years before we adapt in a society as such. So I also outlined that maybe for some of the industries it's going to be more imminent, and for some of the industries it's going to come later. But there are already industries which are starting to feel this. So if you happen to be in that industry, you should be already acting now. Maybe some of the other industries can finish their film or a dinner on a plane and then think about it. But I was trying to do in a way like it's not too alarmist. So just to use the analogy, I don't think so that the role of the pilot is to jump out of the cockpit, run through the lanes, and shout like, "We're gonna all die! We're gonna all die!" That's probably not very helpful, right? So that's not what a good pilot would do, even if he thinks it might be true. So the same thing. I'm trying, like, I'm not shouting here. This is going to be catastrophe, or this is going to kind of be end of civilization, or like we're going to be all enslaved into the AI or whatever. No, I don't think that is going to happen. But on the other side, like pretending nothing is going to happen and just keep you like watching your entertainment, and like I'm not sure that's the best strategy now. So that's what I'm trying to put a balance on these two things in a document.
Okay, you kind of opened there too many topics, but just before we jump on that, in a recent interview, OpenAI's Sam Altman said to the host that he believes that his kids will grow up in a society where they are no longer the smartest around, right? Like the smartest entity is going to be AI. So that kind of like lowers your self-confidence, which is like one of the reactions to people, because basically if you tell them there's someone smarter, your
Yeah.
confidence is going to tell you like, no, 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 you're the smartest, like you've always, like people, humans, we've always been the smartest. And it sounds almost like sci-fi, right? I'm still thinking about this idea, how to connect it to something, like there's these developments we see, but how do you connect it? So how do you make more people understand?
Yep. So this is for a reason the very first point which I address after the opening analogy of the airplane, because I think this is the most important aspect of it, because it also unlocks or prevents some of the other implications. So let me kind of formulate it in an easy sentence. Seeing that the AI is getting comparably on a benchmarks better than human in almost any cognitive activity you can think of, writing text, summarizing text, generating images, generating videos, kind of thinking through, playing strategic games like chess, Go, whatever, right? Maybe there are still humans which are better than that. For chess and Go, that's not true anymore, for instance, because the computer has beaten the best humans already. But maybe in some aspects there are still some humans better. But, and this is what is important to understand, like the best, so when the AI is to beat the human in Go or chess, they don't play an average person on a street. They play the best ones, right? So even if now there are still few humans who can like maybe draw better or think better than AI, if you know what the normal distribution of like intelligence is in a population, that means that if there are still few who can beat computer, the computer beats like 99.9% of the other people, right? So for vast majority of us, this is already true, that the computer can do at least as well or better than we can, right? So I just want to debunk the myth that here is that yes, humans are still better. Yes, few humans are still better. But if you yourself have to do a task in a job, now are you still better than the computer? And for how many tasks this is the true? So I think we'll need, like the first point here is to realize that we are coming to the age where for almost everything which we do, or significant part of it, computers can do at least as good as we, or maybe better. And they have all the other advantages of like not being tired, not needing a salary, not needing a kind of rest time, and so on and so on. So the first thing which we as a humans should do, we should embrace it. We should not try to like foolishly hide it under the carpet and pretend this is not true. And this is the biggest issue I see with the AI debate. So even those who are kind of, let's say, neutral or thinking about how AI could do, they still hang on the belief that, but there are still some humans which are better than AI. But some does not solve your situation. Because if you are not like the best in this area in the world, then probably you are already below the bar that AI can do. And that's the most important piece. Because unless you embrace it, you will never be able to utilize the AI, and AI will be always the enemy. And that's the biggest concern for me, that it's a usual coping with like uncomfortable information, is that if you deny it, you will never get over it. So if you deny that the AI can be better than you will never get over it. And therefore, the very, very first step that a humanity has to do, it has to recognize, yes, it is true. And therefore, Sam Altman is saying it in like a nice way. He's saying my children, right? But like his children will be probably at least as smart or a bit smarter than we are because the evolution of development. So if his children will have it, then all of us will as well. It's just nice way to say it, not to scare people off.
You go on to talk about how it will reshape the notion of what people are considering of being useful. But then you go into like these practical things, and I guess we can take them step by step. So let's go with jobs or things that you do that you think will survive longer, let's call it, right? um, and then let's go to education and what else I can do, like, from being a passive employee to being someone, as you say, active income earner. So what are the basic things that we can look at and say, oh, okay, so this is like a good plan B. So I have an office job, but I used to be, I don't know. I used to be like a handyman, right?
Yep. Okay. So there are probably two things which you can do on a job market. One is relatively subtle and it's not visible, but it's extremely useful. And that is most of the people who are in an employee status, so they are giving their effort and getting money for it as a reward in a salary, right? They are working under assumption that it is somebody else, usually my managers or my shareholders or whoever, responsibility to tell me what they want to do, and it's my responsibility to do it. That's a kind of a mindset. And if I want to do something and my manager wants to do something else, well, then I probably have to do what my manager wants to do. That's kind of a way of people thinking around this topic. So the first step which you need to kind of change here is then you need to get in proactive mode. That doesn't mean like disregarding what you've been asked to do, but on top of what are you being asked to do something more, which is like going in the right direction, but it's your own initiative. And now people come to, yeah, but I barely make my job with all the tasks I have. So how can I? And this is exactly the point, because AI can make you more effective. Okay. So the best advice I can give you here is try to use AI, embrace it. It can do the things which you don't need to or don't want to do, or you do like 50 times a week, can do as good as you can. Try to use AI for that. Don't spend your time on doing this just for the sake of it. And the time that you save, invest into something which you never did before, or you try for the first time, or you took an extra mile. This might not save you from like your job is still going to be replaced by AI, but when it does, you'll be much better positioned to like take a proactive mode and all of a sudden earn your income as like being offering something which the market does not cover yet. Because the biggest risk here is that if you only keep on doing what you do and AI will finally crack your work, what's your alternative? So what else do you have to offer to the market? And when you only start to think about it the moment that you're already unemployed because your work has been already taken by AI, that's too late. So this is why my first suggestion is try to get into some kind of a proactive mode. As I said in an article, not everybody needs to be a freelancer. It doesn't have to go all the way to this kind of self-earner extreme right away. But also staying only in a pure, you tell me what I do and I do it and I get a salary for that. That is not going to cut well in the AI era. So that's my first suggestion.
Okay. So then we also, I think you mentioned it, and we also had this conversation about like there are a couple of like craftsman jobs that will probably survive for like mid 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 long or even long term, maybe, just because at some point you will pay extra, as you do even today, if something is like handcrafted.
Yes. So the kind of handcrafts or handyman's works are going to be some hope, but what needs to one realize is two things. So first of all, when it happens, if you start to like you never practiced, you never did, you don't have a reputation, you don't have a training, your first jobs will be probably okayish at best, not a premium. So even if you enter that, you're going to be probably able to do it somewhat okay, but you will be not collecting the best offers possible. You will probably like scrambling for whatever didn't find demand so far. So that's first piece of a warning. Second piece of a warning, that's not solution for everybody. Like, hey, maybe you don't have the skills to be a handyman, and like starting from a zero, it's almost a no-go scenario. And even if everybody had the skills, we would have the same problem. Like we would be in this Nash equilibrium story where everybody wants to go after something, and then it's not really worth it because there is too much supply for too little of the demand. So therefore, I think for somebody who can or has the skills to go in some kind of a craft, yes, nice, but it's more like let's say a fallback plan if you can't do it the other way around. I would not suggest people to think about it in a way that after AI strikes office white collar jobs, that everybody will turn into carpenters or I don't know, painters or whatever the crafts needed, right? So yes, if you can do it, that's nice to have. You should activate it. Maybe you should practice just to not be too rusty on that. But I don't think so. That's a solution to the story.
Okay, so you're saying let's not look at it from the point of view this if I'm not in that market, I can get in that market, but those in the market will probably not need to panic, let's say, right?
Correct. That's the right way to put
Okay,
it.
so education. You had a couple of notes on education, which were kind of interesting. Care to elaborate?
Yep. So the other thing which is important, the moment that you again admit that AI can be better than you and more intelligent than you, we're kind of entering a territory where there are some people whose whole existence is based on I am more knowledgeable than the population average or even like I don't know high percentile of it, and that is people who are responsible for education of the others. Now, of course, I would not say that this is hitting necessarily the lower levels of schooling, so like preschool, school, elementary school, or maybe even high school, because this is almost like a guaranteed by the state rules that this has to happen, and it also has like implications that kids are taken care for when you are in the job and other things. So I don't think this is an area which we should debate, even though in these areas it will be important how will the curriculum change, but that's not something which I addressed in the issue, so I will not like to open that front here either. What I did open in the issue is the higher education, the university level of education. And the reason for that is that the moment that the AI, like we had a recent now, Elon Musk, boasting that the Grok 4 is better than any PhD, right? So I'm not sure if that's true for now, but it will true. It'll be true sooner or later, right? So if that's true, now what's the value added of you studying for 5 or 6 years a university and not being even clever more than your like smartphone in your pocket? Yeah, and this is going to have like a major implications because I think we will not give up on being smarter. So I don't think that this is going to gravitate to the scenario where people are going to get dumber and dumber because they don't want to educate. No, that's not true. By the way, like having the basic and some solid knowledge will help you also in AI era because you can easily debust the hallucination. You can easily maybe prompt it better because you can give it like more detailed instructions. So I think it makes sense to still have the knowledge and it will not go away. However, the way that you gain it and the reasons why you gain it is going to be different. Now, it may be too harsh to say, but if you take a few steps back and you look at the university, so there is like 3 to 4% people of the university students who want to be scientific, who want to go on their PhD postdocs and so on. But at 3 to 4% as the statistics show. Now, that means 95+% people are in university to get the degree as a certification for a job market. Okay, so they were trained like, hey, if you have this degree, then you can start a job which takes that degree as a minimal entry requirement. Now that will go away, because now if you have an AI agent which can have this same knowledge and can utilize it, then anybody who can who can prompt the AI properly can have the same knowledge without studying it. Okay, so I'll making it a little bit extreme. Maybe the truth will be a few notches below what I'm just trying to describe, but I think it will be much closer to what I'm trying to describe than where we are now. So as a result, both the professors who are now guaranteed to get people because everybody wants to have a work life certificate, they will lose a lot of that audience, because especially in countries where you have to pay tuition like US, the value for money will get very questionable. To take like a loan which you have to repay the whole life for something which you can get out of your smartphone, not a lot of people will think this is a good idea. And secondly, well, you as a professor, so if you only write a manuscript where somebody has to read, well, that can be done by the AI much better. And also, like, what's your value added? So I think that for the education industry, the key thing will be realize that they are not in a I know business anymore. They are in I teach. And that means that I am a content generator. So this is what I would strongly suggest for the professors and like educators or whatever lecturers, that you need to strengthen your delivery part, your content quality part, rather than studying a next white paper or like writing a next manuscript. And that's something which I see quite problematic. And for these people, even the 7 years, which I presume in a title they still have, is probably too little of a time, because this is like a large ship which takes a lot of time to change the direction.
So we had the plane analogy in the beginning, and I kept thinking about, and also you just triggered this idea, whether a flood prevention operation isn't closer to what we need to talk about, which is you're a city, right? You know a flood is coming because nowadays we know. You know what level of the flood
Mm-hmm.
you're expecting, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it will come, it's a force, there's no stopping it. But you can prepare. You have some time to prepare because, you know, up the stream they told you it's coming. And even with flood prevention, what usually the city does is they don't just build up the prevention like just right about the point where the flood is coming, but they actually like up it like a couple of levels. So kind of they prepare for the extreme. So and I keep thinking like, is it as that bad if we talk about the extremes? Like it does not. It maybe takes a little bit time away from you to prepare for the extreme, but if or when the extreme hits, you'll be prepared for it. And
Yes.
those who just prepared for like, a subtle flooding, they'll be, drowning.
Yes, I think it's a kind of a good analogy. Also, because in flooding, the actual wave is always more than is the expectation, because all of a sudden there are some things block the stream and the tide is higher and so on. So I think it's a good analogy. Also, it takes a very strong leadership to build the barriers higher than they predict. Because when it does not happen, you're easy target to say, hey, like you were overdoing it and like you were not being conscious with the costs and so on and so on. But almost always, when the flood win about the barriers, those responsible are kind of miserably hit by the critique and the commentary, right? So yes, in a sense, it does make sense, but it takes a lot of courage there. Why I wrote this article or this essay is that I don't even see us talking about the water is coming, and that's my biggest concern. Like, if we start to build barriers, at least and they turn out to be insufficient or like overkill, that's fine. That is already where I want it to be. Like us sitting in a restaurant on a square and enjoying a life and saying like, ah, water floods, okay, maybe next century. That is something which I don't understand, and that is what I'm seeing in a lot of communities and a lot of states happening, like enjoying the sun life on a terrace and like completely disregarding what's coming.
So we're in this like middle age, and I want to get to the other points, but like we're in this like middle age of kind of you can kind of still quickly jump on the like AI enhancement train. A friend of mine told me that he's currently spending a couple days on a workshop, and the guy leading and the workshop is kind of, I think, AI in marketing, whatnot. And they had like a whole day about like vibe coding for like non coders, like showing different tools and how to use it. And the guy who was leading it said he never coded. He just worked on like digital products all his life. Excellent marketer, and he started like vibe coding like 6 weeks ago. Before like he like started doing this like couple day training for others. And I was like, I'm not even surprised by that, right? Because like you can very quickly pick it up, and you can show it to others. And there was this one study which surprised me that said for like most developers, right,
Mm-hmm.
vibe coding was actually, so they thought that they are 20% more efficient, and in reality they were 20% less efficient when relying on vibe coding. But I kind of understand, right? Like if like you're struggling with it and you already have some things how you're doing it, and maybe you want this overpromise. But at the same time, if you're like someone who the whole life had to rely on these developers to deliver things, and suddenly I can just like spend my next 48 hours just to prompt a machine to do it for me. It will be, I'll be able to do it. So I'm kind of hopeful about this like current age, that if you have it
Mm-hmm.
like the basically, as I think my friend said it, like the only barrier is in your head, right? Like what can you think
Exactly.
of?
Exactly. And this is why I said that I started the essay with your own point, like accepting that this is possible. Because I had all these kind of pushback arguments like, yeah, but it's a language. I don't know. No, it's your local language. Like most of the LLMs work in your local language, so you have no excuse. So you can type in your local language whatever you wish, and the LLM is going to like deal with it, right? So what's the real barrier of not getting it? The only barrier is not trying, right? And that's why I'm trying to write an article like this, saying like, guys, you only need to try. And once you try, you realize that, okay, it has these limitations, or I'm not good in prompting. I need to get better because it didn't really do what I like. It did what I asked for, but I didn't specify it clear enough for this to be what I really meant. And exactly this habit of I can rely on. It's the usual thing. I gotta tell you something, right? So I had some revelations along this way as well. So it hits me as well. And for instance, I was like very good always in designing the presentations and visual aspects of it, like strategic documents and so on. And I realized that I don't give an AI a chance. Like when I'm asked to do a next presentation, what I do, I start to do it. It's like, why? Why do I do this? Right? So why don't I take a first draft from the AI, and then if it's shitty, then okay, I'll kind of spend a minute prompting an AI, and I'll probably didn't get exactly what I wanted, but I did get something that I would like much more than I would do in these minutes, which I spend on prompting the AI, right? So that's a way of thinking about it. You have to give it a chance for even things which you feel natural, very good at, for the AI to start. I will not suggest for this to be the end of a story for you. So I will not like take the final product of the AI and take it, even though in coding sometimes it's good enough to take it. But very often you need to like put some love or extra effort into it. But the draft 1, 2, or even 3, it can get you to it so much faster. And just people need to give it a chance. And that's what I'm trying to kind of instill, this thinking in the people. It's you who decides if you're going to use the AI. I cannot summon upon you. I can't force you. But you are forcing yourself to stay away. And that's the biggest mistake I see.
Two last points. So first off, okay, so we talk about like very philosophically, but like very practically, what kind of like learning will actually matter, right? Like I wanna do something, and I know we opened this topic, and you said like, oh, I wish I knew, but you mentioned a couple of things in the essay.
Yes. So first of all, this proactivity. So this eagerness, like I want to try things which were not done, maybe even with assistance of AI, is certainly an important feature. Well, knowing some area helps. So I would still encourage people to have a domain which they want to like focus on. Ideally, domain which they love. If this not did a match with their studies, because some people study something and they realize they want to do something else. So now it's your time to get knowledgeable in the thing which you really love, because then you would be also inspired to go beyond the usual things. And of course, you will need to learn too, and that's one thing which is still getting a little bit wrong. I don't know if you remember, there was a quote from one of the kind of leaders of the AI labs, and saying that, hey, it's not going to be AI taking your work, it's going to be people who know how to use AI going to take your work. I think it's not true anymore. And I think it's going to be people who will be able to orchestrate multiple AIs working together to take your work, because it's very unlikely that your work is going to be just by single tool completely taken over. It's rather going to be an orchestra of tools. So the ones who can manage the orchestra, who can conduct the orchestra, this will be the ones taking your work. So then I strongly encourage people to learn things about how the agents, how the actual tools combine with each other, because that is going to be the sense of it. Almost none of us is going to be working on actually developing the individual tools. We're going to be all consuming them, and they'll most likely become some form of a commodity sooner or later. But how to combine them, that will be the value added that one can strive with.
And so one of the last points, actually the very last point that you make in the essay, is this topic of real estate for the AI age, right? Like we used to buy land, we used to buy property, and in the future, basically advising to people to build their own almost AI infrastructure, because that will be the thing for the future. So, but what do you mean by that? Like, should I order a couple of NVIDIA chips and build like mini server farm with the GPUs back at home, or like instead of like buying more Bitcoin, or what is it?
Yes, I think you're getting it from the right corner, but let me maybe give a bit of a background for why I'm suggesting so, because it's a little bit counterintuitive. And this is, by the way, the point on which I received the most questions from the audience of the article, because probably it was most tangible, and also people don't really understand one thing of the GPU usage. So very quickly, back then, when you wanted to do business in farming times, you could start without your own land, but if you had your own land, you were much better off. In industrial age, if you wanted to start business, you could start without owning the machines, but if you did own the machines, you were better off. And the same way it's going to be now. So of course you can survive without owning the GPUs because you can rent them. But when everybody will like to rent them, they will be pretty expensive, right? And it's the best analogy I can offer here is following. People don't realize, because they are consuming services now, like OpenAI, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, or whatever you're using. They don't realize that these services bundle two things together. First, they bundle the compute, so some machine in backend which is able to take your request, crunch it, and calculate it. And second, they bundle the actual routine, the model. right? And everybody who works with ChatGPT is so focused on the model that does not realize that you're also buying a compute in your service. Actually, what is funny now, and you probably know it really well, the frontier labs are making the compute bundled, and they lose money on it just to sell the model. So this is the whole discussion with some Altman said that even with I think they said 200 being the price, they are still losing money on the monthly subscription of ChatGPT Premium. So that is something which people don't realize, that the most expensive part about the using ChatGPT is not actually the model itself. The model is developed, okay, they were spent some billions to develop it, but if you divide it by number of time of uses, so the single use of the model, the development cost in it is very small. It's like cents, right? But what is really concerning is the actual compute in a background, which is needed to run to answer your question. And people don't realize that when you're going to get into the age where maybe all four of you in a family want to use it and want to use it for different reasons. So maybe you want to have even like a different account because your daughter or son would not like to see what you were doing with ChatGPT and the other way around. So we will get to the point that it's normal for everybody to have a subscription to the AI, to some service, maybe even different services. Now, if you do the math, if you only take the $20 or euros per month now, and you multiplied it by 4 people in a household, okay? May you say you have already kids which can use it. So you're getting to $80 or 80 euros per month per family. Now, if you look at the price of a GPU, the payback of this, if you can run the same request on your own GPU, is about a few months. It's less than a year, actually, because the GPU would cost somewhere like 1.5 to 2,000 euros. Like it's literally like around the corner. It's not too much of the spend that you can have. And what people don't realize, and this is what I got a feedback after writing the article, is that they don't realize that you can still run the models on your own GPU because they see just the model part. And yes, I didn't explain it in an article well, so maybe I'll append it. But we know, because we discussed that there are open source models which can give you comparable answers as you would get from Claude or ChatGPT. Maybe not like 100% the same thing, but let's say 80, 85%. And those you can run for free on your own GPU. So this is the piece of advice that I give to people. Like, it'll come a time where you spend so much on AI subscriptions that it's actually better for you to have your own GPU locally and run the models and get all the benefits from it. And it's a little bit like if all 4 of you need to rent a car, it's better to have a family car than all 4 of you renting one. And that's the same analogy here, but people don't really necessarily see the open source part in it because it's not mentioned in the article. So that's what confused them. Why would I own a GPU? But the same way, at a certain point of a time, it makes sense to have a desktop computer in your household or laptop. Now, the same way it will make sense to have a GPU. And the good thing is, and this is my last comment to this, that you don't even probably have to build your own farm. Even like, let's say, higher grades of gaming computers are having strong enough GPUs to give this. And then you don't need to have like dedicated spot, but rather like next time you buy a home a notebook, maybe think about something which is more in a gaming spectrum because it has a strong enough GPU for you to take these benefits. And that's the piece of advice I want to kind of transfer to the readers.
Okay. I think that's been a lot to digest and think about. If you have any questions for Filip, we can do a follow-up. Don't forget to send us the questions to ideas at mindsetpodcast.com. That's mindset spelled with AI, or just simply go to mindsetpodcast.com, the website. You can find everything there. And you can reach out to us through that, or just leave a comment on Spotify or on YouTube. And that's all for this episode. Thank you, Filip.
Thank you, David, for walking us through the documents.
Till next time.
See you.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcast app. Follow us on YouTube, and you can follow us both on LinkedIn as well. Have a good one, Filip. Till next time.
Take care.